This video depicts the techniques of making a shop cabinet with shelves. The cabinet is 3 feet tall by 4 feet wide. It's made of baltic birch with cherry face frames, and it illustrates the use of dowels and dados and rabbets. All right, Jim Vanderscaff, Down East Wood Art. Welcome to my shop. And today we want to talk about a shop hanging cabinet with doors. And here's the reason why. If you can see through the camera or the video here, everything that I have on these shelves is necessary. Well, most of it's necessary. I've gone through it recently and thrown some stuff out, but it builds up over time and it doesn't look particularly attractive and it collects dust. And so I need a cabinet. I need an enclosed cabinet. And what I want to do is build a cabinet just like this. I've made this with SketchUp. I can certainly provide this to you. Your sizes are going to be different, but some of the techniques of how it was built might be useful to you. So, just to give you an idea of the type of cabinet, if you swing around and focus on the one that I've got for my tools, this is what we're talking about. I want something that, in my case, has shelves in the middle, but in particular has doors that swing like this that I can put 5-inch wide cans of solvent or waxes or whatever, and then just close it off because with a magnetic hinge so that it doesn't collect dust. So that's what we want to build. And now what I want to do is show you a little bit about where we are so far. What we've done is, this happens to be the door on the outside. It's just the outside door. I will finish this off with cherry pieces of wood, strips of wood on the outside. But that's just the door, and we'll show you that in another video. If you just look inside, Alex, and walk around it, take a bunch of pictures or videos, you can see what it's all about. Now we're going to hang this. We're going to hang this on the wall. All of this stuff is going to go inside here, and we're going to use what's called a French cleat. What's a French cleat? Well, this is a French cleat. It's a really neat mechanism. So what you do is you take this part that I'm holding in my left hand and put that up against the wall. And you screw that into the wall. Then you take this part, which is going to be attached to the back of the cabinet, and it'll be on the back of the cabinet like this. So this is on the wall, and this is on the wall, and this is on the cabinet. And when those two things come down on one another, it just holds it firmly against the wall. This is on the cabinet, this is on the wall, it just holds it together. So what I've done is, because I've got a fair amount of weight on this, I've built two of those. I've cut them already. Both of them are the same. One will simply be down here. The other one will be up here on the back, of course. All right, so those are the French cleats. Got a little picture of right at the end how those go together. Great. All right, so they're very effective. I used it on my cabinet on the wall over there. You can't see it, but it's held on the wall by two sets of French cleats. So I face framed the outside of this. So this is cherry. Just built this to match exactly to where the plywood is, the plywood edges, because you kind of want to cover those to make it look nice. And each one of them is held together with pocket screws. You can see the pocket screws, holes on those, and they're throughout the entire face frame. It's made with very clear grained cherry that happens to be 1.125 thick. So we'll continue to take this thing apart and you can see how it's made. These clamps, incidentally, if you haven't got them, are specifically made for cabinets because this face is perpendicular to the bar that holds it, and they're very effective for that purpose. As someone has said, you can never have enough clamps, and even when I do the glue up with this, I will not clamp the whole thing together all at once, simply because I don't have enough clamps. So I'll build it up very shortly, very slowly, and then you can see. All right, so this is still held in place. Got one more clamp in the back. Let that drop down. And we'll start taking these off. Well, there goes one. And you can see they got grooves in them. And each one of these grooves is for each one of the shelves. That holds it in place. There's also a groove right here that is used for the bottom piece. There's a groove over on this side, again, to hold these pieces in place. And that's all the way through. The other one, every one of these has a groove that's held in place. So now, why would I choose Baltic birch? Well, that's what this is, Baltic birch. It's like, I believe it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 layers. It's 9 layers for 1/2 inch. It's just slightly under an exact 1/2 inch. When you cut this with a dado blade, it just fits in there perfectly. And you can see that thins the wood down by half. This happens to be a 1/2 inch, so that's 1/4 inch. But it's perfect to interlock this whole cabinet together, because that's what you want. You want everything to be a perfect fit and locked together. And just like that, and just like the end piece, okay? So what I'll do now is lay some of these pieces down and just show you how I started to make the cuts for this, because it's interesting to have a board this size in your shop and be able to cut it properly. Now, imagine a 5-foot by 5-foot board coming into your shop. Here it is. There's 5 feet. It's 5 feet this way. I didn't get a 4x8 sheet because that was simply too big, and it's 5 feet this way, okay? So what I did was I brought it into the shop. None of this was here, of course. And if you look underneath, Alex, if you go down underneath here, you'll see these boards. They keep it up off the table, and there's a reason for that. I'll show you in just a minute. Anyway, here's this board out to 5 feet, way out to here, laying on my shop. Now, how do I handle it? Well, putting it on a table saw and trying to cut it on a table saw, this board would be way out to here, and it'd be very difficult to handle. So I made a jig, and people are now using these things as track saws. But way before there were track saws, there were devices like this to be able to cut a board. And the way this is made is it's a perfectly straight edged board. This is a very thin piece that allows the skill saw, you're going to have a skill saw run along here, to make a cut along this edge. On the back, this is material that is typically in drawers or cabinets in a home, and it's very sticky. So even with dust on here, it's pretty sticky, but I clean that all off if I'm going to use it. And so I laid my 5-foot board on like this, put this on top of it, whipped out my skill saw, and let's say I was just cutting the edge right here. So I would set it up so it's perfectly along that edge. Of course, the board was way out to here. Then take a clamp, clamp this down on this edge, and so that's not going to move. Because of the sticky material, look at that. When I put any pressure down on here at all, this board, Alex, is not going to move at all relative to that edge. Look at that. I'm not pushing down hard, I'm just trying to move. It's not going to move. So my saw isn't plugged in, but the way this works is the saw blade is set so that this dimension is exactly to the saw blade. You see it's right flush on that edge. And I start it up and just run it all the way down to make a perfectly straight cut. It works very effectively. You have to, of course, hold it against this edge. You want to have this, put wax on this surface and put wax on the underside of your skill saw. And I've used this for this entire system and found it to be very effective. I only had to adjust one cut, maybe a 1/16 of an inch as a result of this, but I was able to trim that off and fix it without any trouble at all. All right, so the next thing is, what about all those little cuts in the boards? How do you do those? Well, it turns out that you can do those with something called a stacked dado. What's a stacked dado? Well, a stacked dado is nothing more than this. And we'll show it here. Normally you got a table saw blade in there. You can put these stacked dados on a table saw. There are limitations to what you can do. Remember, I'm only trying to cut a 1/2 inch. This is exactly 1/2 inch. There are 4 elements there. They fit on a DeWalt 745, even though it has a short arbor. The arbor is where you screw on with a nut the table saw blade. And so you can put these on. That's one piece, another piece, another piece, and the outer blade. So that's just the way they go on. And you screw those on, tie them down, and then make these cuts. Now, when you're making these kinds of cuts, and this would be flipped over, don't put your hand where this blade is cutting through. Make sure you put your hands in a place other than that. Again, safety first. But that's the way all these cuts were made. The beauty of this system is that plywood fits in that groove with these 1/2 inch dados just perfectly. And what do I mean by that? Well, here we go. Take any one of these grooves, slide it in, it goes together perfectly. Okay? So that's the way they work. Makes it strong, makes it very well supported, and makes it very effective. All right, so now let's talk about glue up for this. How would we handle that? Well, you can see we got all the pieces made, and what I would start off doing is remove, this was the top piece, yes, this is the top piece. When you're laying these things out, it's a good idea, especially if you're doing it for the first time, to mark. Let's see, this was the top piece. Get some of these out of here. So what I want to do is prepare this for the glue up. In order to do that, let's get all this dust out of here. This dust and chips will stop, will prevent the board from getting down in there completely, and you won't get a good fit out. All right, so let's make sure we got the top. That's the top. And we'll go just like that. And make sure that we got the side. The side will go like this. Great. All right, so now we're going to apply some glue to this and clamp it down. All the way along this edge. All right, so we got the glue. So I'll set this board. All right, I think that's it. Thanks for watching, folks, and hopefully you come back for the next video when we show the rest of this all glued up and assembled and ready to go up on the wall.